Welcome everybody back to Fire Talk. Now we got part two of our Friday trade deadline breakdowns over here. Kind of just talking about what we want to see from this trade deadline. If you missed it, we just did a half an hour episode on all the starting pitchers that we really like. Mainly went over three guys: Jack Flaherty, Yusei Kikuchi, and Tariq Skubal. Those are kind of our main guys. Talked about some other guys as well. But if you missed that, check that one out. Super long vid. Really broke them down for quite a long time. It was a fun one. Now we're going to get into the bullpen side of things. Before we do that, very, very quickly, said this last time, don't want to make a giant spiel, but we do have our underdog promo code, hashtag Friar, or not hashtag, but the promo code is Friar Talk. You get 50% deposit match when you put in money. So you put in $20, you get $10. Helps us out a ton. If you guys want to support the channel, go ahead and rock with that. We would really appreciate it, but I want to get that out there. With that said, let's talk about these bullpen guys. We're going to give you 10 today. We're going to break it down, mostly the top five guys, quickly go over this like 6 through 10. I'll give you our 6 through 10 list. So starting from 10 to 6, we have first off Tanner Banks. He's a lefty. He's on the White Sox. His baseball savant page is okay. He's just kind of a middle of the pack left-handed guy. He has 2+ years of control, so you would get him for quite a while. But he's not like that great. Like he's not going to like move the needle or anything like that. At number 9 and then number 8, we have two guys on the A's. And the only way I really see this making any sense in a trade is if you go and get both of them. The first guy is TJ McFarland. He's like 35 years old. He's kind of a lefty specialist. His baseball savant page is somewhat interesting. He has some positive qualities. Maybe a guy that Ruben Niebla thinks he could get a lot out of later this year, though he does kind of seem a little bit redundant to Matsui. And then the other guy is Lucas Ursig. I think that's how you say his name is Ursig. And he's a righty on the A's. A little bit better, a little bit younger. But the only way I really see a trade making sense there is if you go and get both those guys. Then at number 7, guy that pretty much everyone I feel like knows for the most part, Michael Kopech. He used to be a starter. Now he's a reliever. He doesn't really have good numbers. He has really bad control. He throws gas. He's wild. He's once again kind of like a reclamation project, and that's why we don't have him in our top 5. Though, maybe the Padres look at him, maybe Niebla looks at him and is like, dude, I can fix some things. We can get this guy to be lights out of the bullpen. And then at number 6, this guy he seems like 100% chance he gets traded, and that's Carlos Estevez. He's on the Angels. He's a rental just for this year. He's been pretty damn good the past few years, just like 3 ERA guy, pretty consistent. And we like him. Like if the Padres went and made a move for him, I think we'd all be pumped. Like it's not the fact that like, oh, he's not in our top 5 is like a negative thing. We just have guys that we think are better pitchers, or they have more control, or they're cheaper, or both of those reasons. But he's talked about like almost as like probably like a top 3 guy in the market. I feel like he's usually there after Mason Miller and Tanner Scott as the next guy. A little bit lower for us because we do think there's going to be a lot of people looking out and reaching out for him. And he's kind of a sure thing to get traded. So that one might be turned into a little bit more of a bidding war than some of these other guys. But great pitcher there. Only like true issue, I guess, is that he's a righty. But those are our top guys. So with that said, Chase Isaac, what do you guys think about that? That beginning little chunk of list that, maybe guys that we don't necessarily love you make a trade for, but they are improvements to the current Padres bullpen.
Yeah, so starting off with Tanner Scott, you said he had a couple years control. When you look at his baseball savant this year, it looks really great. You take a step back to last year and the year before that, is not so much. So it's one of those things where he could be breaking out, he could be figuring it out. He's had a few years in the league and he can continue to do this, or hey, he's having a really good year because he figured something out, and the batters are just 1 year away from figuring him out again and just kind of going back to what he was before. Which it's not a bad thing. Like he doesn't walk people, which is always something you don't want in a reliever. It's just he's having a better year this year. His expected ERA is going to be lower than what he has, almost by a full run. He's a lefty pitcher, which we do need. Um, Probably wouldn't cost a ton. The White Sox are obviously selling. They're the worst team in baseball. So he's always like, he's not going to he's going to provide value, but he's not going to give you the most bang for your buck value out of the guy on this list. That's why he's at 10. McFarland, his numbers, his baseball savant page is crazy. A lot of red. He doesn't strike out anybody, but his skill set plays very well to Petco Park, and basically only Petco Park. So it's one of those things where he could be great. He's not going to strike out a ton of people. He's not going to blow it by people. He's going to get a lot of ground outs. He could come into, those situations where, hey, all right, the starter loaded up the bases. We need a ground ball double play, and there's a lefty up. He's the guy you want out there on the mound. But in a couple other situations, probably not. Urquhart is just solid in general. Don't know how much you would go for his baseball savant. It's really, really solid. Kopech is one of those guys that's going to really to me because he has experience as a starter, but he's been a bullpen guy this year, and I think parts of last year. Are they going to sell him as a bullpen? Is they going to sell him as a, hey, you know what? He could go either way for you guys, and that way he has more value. This guy throws triple digits. Yeah, his control is a little bit off, but if you can fix that, you're going to have quite the little piece there, in which I think Michael Kopech probably intrigues me more than most guys on this list, just because he's never worked with Ruben Niebla before, and Ruben Niebla could have himself a fun little project, and if he fixes Kopech's control, then he's worth every single thing that we send over there to the White Sox. Even if it's just the bullpen guy, having him and Suarez both throwing gas out the bullpen with some good secondary stuff. Hey, and worst case scenario, you stretch him out to start next year. Good work. Carlos Estevez, he's one of those guys. He's going to be the back of the bullpen. He's a flamethrower. Walks a little bit more people. He's probably just going to be a little bit more expensive. Like Matt said, he's going to be top of the market guy. A lot of teams are looking at him. A lot of contenders are going to look at him and be like, hey, we need an extra closer or we need a setup guy. He's going to be that. Is he going to be worth the price tag for what he is? Could be. Could be better with Niebla fixing up a couple things. Could be better because, he's in Petco Park, which is a lot more of a pitcher-friendly park. It's just, what is the price tag that the Angels want on him? If I'm the Angels, I want a lot, just because we're still a few years away of contention and we don't want to waste Mike Trout's career, so we're going to ask a lot. So just for that reason, I don't think he's a priority compared to a couple other guys on the list.
Yeah. So going through the list from 6 through 10, Tanner Banks doesn't really intrigue me too much. It's kind of like a guy where it's like, I don't know if you guys remember 2021 when we didn't get any bats and then we ended up saying, hey, there's Jake Marisnick. That's Tanner Banks. TJ McFarland's actually really intriguing. I think, he's kind of old, but also he's a guy, his baseball savant looks great. Lefty specialist, going to get you a ground ball when you need it. Doesn't strike out a lot of guys, but he gets outs, and that's what you need out of the bullpen. Lucas Urseg, funny enough, I think he was like a former shortstop. And then he came in, and now he's throwing gas on the mound, and he's probably one of the most intriguing arms. And all his spotlight is getting taken away because Mason Miller is one of the guys that might be available at the deadline. But Urseg, he's not just as good, but he's pretty damn good, and he's someone that definitely deserves some attention. I'll talk about Kopech last because he's intriguing. Carlos Estevez. Now, I think for some people, we might have him a little low. I agree with the ranking. 6 to me is fair because he might cost a little more than we think. And if you're comparing him to another favorable reliever that's going to be at the top of the market, you'd rather give up a lot for the other reliever who's a lefty. At least I would rather do that. But Estevez, I expect some regression. He's also pitching on a team. He hasn't had as much consistency as the other guys. So I don't really care for Estevez. If we got him, I'd be okay with it. I understand. But going to Michael Kopech, he might be the most interesting guy on our list. And not because he's that great or he's having a great year or anything like that, but strictly because everyone thinks that he has loads of potential. And it showed. I mean, he's a young guy. I think he's like 27, 28 years old. The White Sox are clearly having a fire sale. I mean, right now he has a 4.74 ERA. Showed potential as a starter in 2021, 2022. He pitched around a 3.5 ERA in both those years. He can strike guys out. Right now he's striking out guys at a 12.1 K per nine. So, I mean, he's able to strike guys out really well. I mean, 92nd percentile in K percentage right now. He can get Ks. On the flip side, he walks a shitload of guys. He is wild, and right now he has almost a 5 based on balls per 9. That's really high, especially for a reliever. You're looking at a guy that's, if he's coming in, he's probably going to give up a walk or two. You're almost feeling like he's guaranteed to give up a walk or two. Maybe for a guy that throws 100, you're not really scared of that. But also at the same time, in crunch time, when you're only up by 1, you can't really afford for a walk to be given up. I will say his ERA doesn't really tell the whole story. He does have an expected ERA of 3.88, but even then, for a reliever, that's pretty high. But he does throw gas, and he has showed potential to be a really damn good pitcher. Now, my thing is, I want Niebla to work with him. I want Niebla to be able to turn him into a valuable reliever because I think he can be a really damn good reliever. But the problem is, are the Padres in a position to where they can say, let's get a project arm? Because you're in a position where you're kind of fighting for a wild card spot. Can you afford to wait and see if a project can end up being successful for you? If they were like games and games ahead and they were guaranteed to make the wild card spot and they could wait till September or October for him to turn it around, I'd be all in. But that is what's intriguing about Michael Kopech for us, is that we don't know if he's actually going to be good from the get-go, and we need someone who's going to be valuable out of the pen from the get-go, because right now we can't rely on De Los Santos. De Los Santos has been so bad that they ended up throwing him when they were up 9 runs against the Nationals. You don't really see that happen often for someone that's supposed to be pretty damn good. Can't rely on Matsui. Sean Reynolds is young. Kolek has time, so you really need a righty. If you're going to get a righty, you really need a guy that's going to be really damn good. Kopech can be really good. It's just a matter of when will he end up being good, and will it end up being with us?
Yeah, I think that's why he's probably the most interesting. That's why I kind of was like, all right, like this dude is like, it's just like a lot of like, there's good stuff and there's bad stuff. Estevez, like he's going to be the more talked about guy. And then the A's potential trade is interesting. And then Tanner Banks at the end, like we were kind of like, okay, it's a lefty, like he's decent. Like if we got him, we'd be like, okay, that's good. We need another lefty, and you're not giving up much for him. You know, you're not, a lot of these guys you're not going to give up too much for. Kopech, maybe. Estevez, yeah. But then from that, that's the first guys. Honestly, I'm going to do our next 5, and we can break these guys down however we want. Maybe we'll go even back and forth for like, a couple times with this. But going down 5-1, and I think this is really like, this is what we kind of came up with. This isn't like, you might have a totally different list because maybe you're evaluating different things, and it's hard to kind of like rank these guys. But the next guy we have at number 5 is Pete Fairbanks. We have him over Estevez. Has 2 years of control. I think it was $4 million this year, $4 million next year, and then $7 million after that. He's not having the best year this year, but he's been better than Estevez has. Like honestly, like if you look at his numbers, like he's been a little bit better. He's a righty. That's the downside. He's been good on the Rays. He's been solid. Like last year, he was a monster. I like him a lot. And it would be a pretty big time addition to his closed games. Like you can trust him late in games, late in situations like that. He's playing on a Rays team that's usually in the mix. He's not playing somewhere that just sucks. Which I do think it matters for a reliever, honestly. I do think that's fair, because you see some of these guys that haven't been in those spots and they crumble a little bit. The next guy, Tyler Holton. He's a lefty on the Tigers. He has 2+ years of control, and he's honestly been a beast this year. He doesn't get talked about that much as a trade candidate. Maybe it costs a little bit more because he does have control. I'll pop up his Savant page right now, just because I feel like he's a name that people don't really like. They haven't really heard about him as much. Like he's not as prominent of like you got to go trade for this guy. Let me get it up for you guys right now. Here we go. So, but look at that. Like there's some positive stuff there. And he's filling need. He has, I mean, like, he's been good this year. He was good last year. He's good the year. Look at this. Like, maybe he didn't pitch a lot in 2022, but last year he had a 2.1 ERA, under a 1 whip both these years, sub 3 ERAs and sub 1 whips both these years. Is the Savant page like crazy? Not necessarily crazy, but he gets a lot of chase. Like, it's still pretty good. Last year, it's looking pretty similar, dude. Like, he's a good arm. He's a really good arm. So it would cost a lot to trade for him. But he'd be a great piece, and he's not really getting talked about that much. If you're going in this year, guys, and you want to make the massive trade to make you the number one team that, not maybe the number one team, but like put you up there with the Phillies. I feel like the Phillies and the Dodgers of like the top dogs in the NL. You go trade for Holton and Skubal. This team got that much better. Like, that's the thing. But you're trading Solis. You're trading a whole lot. You might have to trade Solis and Snelling if you're going to go do that. So that's like the most insane package. That's the AJ Preller. Dude, if we don't go on a run this year, I'm gone. So we're going to go full send in this final trade deadline. But that's a good name there. And the reason we have him at 4 over a couple of other guys is because he's going to cost a little bit more. The next guy, Yimi Garcia, we talked about him a little bit in the past. We talked about him with a trade with Kikuchi, and I think that's what we're kind of trying to pair up in these. Like, okay, that makes a lot of sense to trade for Kikuchi and Yimi Garcia. He's a righty. He's been good. I like him a lot. I'll pull up his Savant page in a little bit here. But then the two top guys. Number 1, it's Tanner Scott. We've said this over and over and over. It's not a surprise. We want Tanner Scott. He shouldn't cost that much, but he's really good and he's a lefty. He's like the perfect guy for the Padres to go after. Number 2, and he's the best. This guy's the best. That's not why we have a number 2. It's Mason Miller. And maybe for some people are like, why would we trade for Mason Miller? You want to know why you trade for Mason Miller? It's pretty simple. All right. So he is hurt right now. He like broke his hand or something. He was doing the thing that what Devin Williams did. He like punched a door or something. He had to go like do a workout. And he got all mad. But the reason that you don't really care about that is because he's going to come back. And you see this, guys, this is what you're looking for right here. This is insane. This is absolutely absurd. Is he going to get traded? Probably not. But he's the best reliever on the market. Like 100%. There's zero questions asked. He's probably the best reliever in baseball. This is absolutely insanity right here. So that's why he's our number 1, or he's our number 2. But he's going to cost a ton. He has a ton of control. I don't know why you trade him if you're the A's. I really don't. But Tanner Scott, he's our number 1. I mean, this dude also absolute monster. Last year he was a beast. Year before he wasn't quite as good, but these last 2 years that he's put together, he has been really good, and he's almost a guarantee to be traded. Like he's and he has only he's a rental, right? Like he doesn't have another year of control after this, does he? He's a rental. Okay, yeah. So I mean, you're getting him for half a season. It shouldn't cost that much, but he is the perfect need for you. There's literally one issue. He walks a lot of guys. All right. But besides that, everything else is insane. So that's kind of our list, 5 through 1. I'll go through it one more time for y'all. At number 5, Pete Fairbanks, been on the Rays. You probably know the name. You've probably seen him pitch in the playoffs. Tyler Holton on the Tigers. You just don't really hear about him as much because he's on the Tigers, but he's a really good lefty. Yimi Garcia, also really solid reliever on the Blue Jays. He's probably pretty much a guarantee to get traded. Mason Miller, hopefully you've heard of Mason Miller. And then number 1, Tanner Scott, which we keep saying over and over, like that's our number 1 guy. And I would say that Tanner Scott is probably our number 1 guy that we want the Padres to trade for out of any single player in the league. Like that is the number 1 need. That is the thing that's going to help you most. And he's going to be a guy that people are going to be looking after. And the Marlins are obviously sellers. So that's 5 through 1. Chase Isaac, what do you guys think?
I think Fairbanks is like, if you don't get Scott, I think Fairbanks or Holton is the number 2 and 3 realistically. I mean, if Mason Miller is on the market, I think anybody in their right mind going, all right, he's the number 1 guy on the market for any type of bullpen, anything. He's going to be number 1. However, the trade package for Mason Miller kind of drops him all the way down just because of how expensive he's going to be. He's got tons of years of control left. He's one of the best relievers in the league. There's just Mason Miller is the complete all-star closer package that any team would ever want, and he's got years of control ahead of him. However, the trade package makes him a lot less desirable. So Tanner Scott 1, Pete Fairbanks 2. Fairbanks, we've seen him pitch in the World Series. We've seen him pitch in the playoffs. Sure, he's not striking out a ton of guys this year, but last year he had a really solid year. This year he's still having a good year, just not striking out as much. Maybe just a tweak from Ruben Niebla, and he goes back to how he was last year, and I believe he's got one more control with that. Yeah, he's not your lefty pitcher, but he's a guy that's pitched in the playoffs. Then probably Yimmy, then Tyler Holton. I mean, any reliever with a couple years of control is always great, but I know I'm still. Uh, as long as you get Tanner Scott or Pete Fairbanks, I think, or if you get both of them, I'm back. If you get both of them, it's going to be 100% bullpen solid. You're gonna make if you make the playoffs, you can make a deep push with how solid the bullpen is, and then if you get a starter and those two guys, team is probably going to be the most complete team the Padres have had under Preller's tenure, and probably the only reason he will keep his job.
You're damn right, Chase. We just talked about that yesterday. How if Preller is able to swing a few trades, this might be the best and most complete team Preller has ever made. It's only taken 10 years, but it happened. And it's funny when Chase said, I sound so salty. When Chase said World Series for Fairbanks, I couldn't help but put quotation marks in that in the World Series, or at least some Mickey ears, because you guys know what type of World Series that was. Either way, it was a big game. Now, going back to the 5 relievers. I thought that was pretty good what Chase did, because he's right. Mason Miller's going to cost a shitload. And is it worth it? Yeah, probably. Though, I think it's more worth it for a team like the Orioles, a team with a deep farm system like that, because we're very top-heavy in our farm system. We have Salas, DeVries, Lesko, Snelling, and then shit. Not shit, but not very good. So it's a little hard to put a package together when that package could go towards someone like Crochet, if you want Crochet. I don't want Crochet. Skubal, star like that, right? So it's a little hard to put together a package for a reliever when you can put together that same type of package for someone who's going to be your starter or an ace for the foreseeable future. Though, if Mason Miller is available, obviously you have to at least try. You got to do your due diligence to see what you can give up for him, because that he's a star. He's one of the best bullpen arms in all of baseball. What just happened?
Okay, this isn't. Sorry, I have to interrupt. This is just insane. And I know you're going to think it's great. And this has nothing to do with the trade deadline.
Oh,
the Dolphins just paid to it $212 million for 4 years. So we don't even have to talk about it. I just saw.
Thank God we got Herbert. But anyway, so you look at Pete Fairbanks and you're saying this guy was absolutely disgusting last year. He's got a few years of control. Honestly, he's not that expensive. I don't know how much he's going to actually cost when it comes to players, but Randy Arozarena just got traded for peanuts, a number 12, a number 22, and a player to be named later. So you got to imagine Pete Fairbanks, who isn't having his best year and who's a reliever, you got to imagine he's going to be cheaper than that, right? And I know the consensus is don't trade with the Rays. Well, last time we traded with the Rays, we got a Cy Young Award winner. I don't even know if any of the players we traded to them are still on that team. And we still have the other player that we traded for with the Rays, Jake Cronenworth. So we won those. But going back to Pete Fairbanks, great reliever, guy that we've seen put up great numbers before. Someone that I think would definitely help the Padres, especially when you're considering like, hey, other than Estrada and Suarez, you don't really have any righty relievers that you can really rely on a day-to-day basis. Like, we've been lucky these past few days, considering like Dylan Cease just threw 9 innings pitched, no hitter. King threw 6 or 7. Waldron's thrown 6 or 7. Vasquez threw 6. Like, all these guys are going deep into games, so we really haven't had to rely on guys like Matsui, De Los Santos, stuff like that. But if we did have to, like, I think I speak for all three of us, I am not comfortable when I see De Los Santos, Matsui, Kolek, Reynolds, any of the Gillespie. I'm not comfortable when I see any of them going out there. So, Yeah, that's where Pete Fairbanks comes in. I think he'd be a great target for the Padres. Now, if we're talking about packages, and I think this is the easiest way to get, you kill two birds with one stone, right? You go ahead and get either Yimi Garcia and Yusei Kikuchi, which is the bargain. That's ideally the deal. That deal to me makes the most sense if you're not willing to give up top prospect capital. That helps you right now. If you're willing to give up top prospect capital, you go ahead and get either Scooble or Flaherty, and you package that with Tyler Holton. Tyler Holton's a guy, I'm surprised he hasn't been mentioned that much, considering Detroit's not really that good, and they should definitely be in the trade market. I can't imagine them being good for the foreseeable future. Torkelson doesn't look like he's going to be a good ball player. Baez sucks. I don't really know any of the other names that they have on their team other than the top guys, which is Scooble, Flaherty, and Holton. So if you can package Flaherty and Holton, because think about it, if you get Scooble and Holton, you're probably giving up Salas, Snelling, Lesko, and maybe another guy. So if you're willing to give that up, if you're AJ Preller and you're saying, hey, I need job security, I want to be with the Padres for the foreseeable future, then hey, go ahead, AJ. Like, I get it. I know. But realistically, Flaherty and Holton would be my preferred package because it's cheaper. So with that being said, we saw Holton's baseball savant page. We saw his year last year. I'm surprised he doesn't get talked about as much as some of the other guys that are bullpen arms, because this guy's really damn good and he deserves some more praise. And he'd be a great piece for the Padres. He's a lefty. Don't have to worry about Yuki going out there anymore. I mean, I can imagine Yuki would still go out there in some blowouts, but in a close game, wouldn't have to worry about Yuki. Definitely a great trade target. Yimi Garcia. I took some notes. I didn't take notes on all these guys. I was just going through yesterday and trying to write some notes on some guys. But Yimi Garcia, 5-pitch mix, fastball, cutter, sinker, slider, changeup. He's on pace to have his best year yet. He has a 12.6 K per 9, similar to Michael Kopech, but a much better ERA, a 2.7 ERA. And the 2.7 ERA is really good, but his expected ERA tells us that he has potential to be even better. His expected ERA is a 2.28, so we could probably expect some positive regression, especially in a ballpark like Petco. His current batting average against is 152 on expected batting average against is 152 on Fangraphs, 168 on Savant. Strikeout rate, 95th percentile. Best pitches is fastball at a 114 batting average against, and he's throwing it 33% of the time. So flamethrower, probably won't be that expensive. Just came back from injury. Pair him up with Yusei Kikuchi, and you have a pretty cheap package to immediately help your team win some ball games and put you in the thick of the playoff race. Mason Miller. What an interesting guy, right? Mason Miller is a guy who's probably a top 5, top 10 reliever in all of baseball. Super young, plays for a team that's not going to be competing anytime soon. The only draw that they have to keeping him really is that they need someone for when they go to Vegas to be able to market. Other than that, I don't see a reason to keep him. He's just really young, and he has a few years of control, quite a bit of years of control. I don't want to talk about him too much just because I don't actually think he's going to be available, but I can imagine if he's available, we're probably going to end up seeing a lot of his name pop up a lot, and I can imagine we're going to talk about him at length in the upcoming videos. But the main guy to talk about is Tanner Scott, and all three of us have been in consensus since we've known that we've needed bullpen arms that, hey, the number one guy you should be trying to acquire is Tanner Scott. He has a 1.21 ERA with under a 1 WHIP in 44 innings pitched. Not a lot of innings pitched, but I can't imagine you'd have to throw a lot of innings if you're on the Marlins. In the last 32 innings he has pitched, he's only allowed 2 runs. He's a lefty. The Padres are in deep need of a lefty. He's a rental. He's going to become a free agent after this year. Can't imagine he's going to cost a lot. Again, you just saw Rosarena go for peanuts. I can't imagine Tanner Scott would go for more than that. Mainly throws 2 pitches, fastball and a slider. If you use him in MLB The Show, you know that he's a dog. He's pretty nasty in MLB The Show. I love using him in MLB The Show. You guys know I talk about the show at length when I'm actually playing it. But yeah, he's pretty damn good out of the bullpen. Fastball has a 0.89 batting average against. Under a 100 batting average against his fastball, and a 164 batting average against his slider. Easily going to be the best reliever on the market if Mason Miller is not available. And again, we're talking about a lot of bullpen arms because the main point for the Padres right now is you need bullpen help. The 20th ranked bullpen in all of baseball is probably not going to cut it in a deep playoff race against like 6 other teams. And then you're going to the playoffs against some of the best teams in baseball. You need a deep bullpen, and the deep bullpen's what ended up helping the Padres in 22. So I think that's the best formula for success when it comes to the Padres and for the foreseeable future. So just to recap, Tanner Scott is going to be our number one guy. And then depending on our needs, Mason Miller somewhere in there, or depending on our desires, who we put in order, Mason Miller somewhere in there, Pete Fairbanks somewhere in there. Sorry, I'm forgetting the lefty, Holton somewhere in there, and then Yimi Garcia. But those are the top 5 guys for sure for the Padres to be able to go after at the deadline.
Yeah, so I revised our list a little bit based off what we said. So one, I took Mason Miller out because I feel like Mason Miller, like you're right, like it doesn't really make much sense. Like we're talking about him, but it's like okay, it's not really like a thing. It's just more like Mason Miller's awesome. Always remember that. But so I changed the list up. Tanner Scott still number 1. 2, and maybe I want to see what you guys are thinking. This is how I changed it. Tanner Scott 1, Pete Fairbanks 2, Tyler Holton 3, Yimi Garcia 4, Carlos Estevez 5. Does that seem right? Like, and maybe Holton above Fairbanks?
I'd probably put no. I think Fairbanks is fair. Because Fairbanks or shit. I don't know. This motherfucker. Bro.
Kopech or Estevez though. I feel like those two could be flopped.
Yeah. I think whatever order you put them in, and I think the best bet for us is going to be putting a thread on Twitter or something. Sorry. I think the best. Let me pause it. Hold on. Let me let him out.
So Isaac's saying a thread on Twitter would be the best way to decide whether or not people agree in either Fairbanks, then Holton, or Estevez and Kopech, and see which ones should be flip-flopped as. I think Kopech for me is above Estevez. I don't know if you guys agree with me on that.
What do you think, Isaac? I feel like you like Kopech a lot too.
I do. I mean, he's a great arm. It's just
the situation isn't the right. That's the thing.
It's hard. If we were in a position,
right?
If we're like, oh, we're like 6-7 games up in the wild card race, we can wait for this guy till September. Then it's like, yeah, like for sure, go after him. But I really like him, and it's really hard to not like him because he's young too, and he throws heat, and he's been a starter before. It's kind of like Nick Martinez, but it walks the guys like 10 times more.
But he strikes out more.
He strikes out more. Exactly. It's a trade-off. We'll make a thread. If you follow us on Twitter, we'll try making a thread here soon about the best trade targets for us.
Okay, here we go. It wouldn't unmute. I don't know what's going on. I was gonna say. So I think that. So this is my other question I had for you guys. So we got that. Right? The other thing I was wondering is like we talked about the pack and Pete Fairbanks. So let's say that's your haul, right? Would you rather get that, or would you rather go for less? This would cost less. Kikuchi, Yimi Garcia, and Tanner Scott.
What was the first one again? Good. I cut out.
So you would get Jack Flaherty and Tyler Holton, and then you'd also make an additional trade to trade for Pete Fairbanks. Because we're talking like ideal scenarios of what you'd add, right? So Holton, Flaherty in one deal, like we talked about the combo deal, and then you get Pete Fairbanks in the other deal. It's gonna cost more. The alternate deal would be Kikuchi and Yimi Garcia in one package, and then you also trade for Tanner Scott. It would cost less. Like, because the first deal is you're getting more. Like you're getting a better group of players, I would say. It's gonna cost more.
And you're getting Holton and Fairbanks on more than 1 year control.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of hard. I think those are the two best scenarios that you go, right? Those got to be the two best scenarios.
I think so too.
Like you're gonna give up a lot. You're not, and I don't think for either of those deals you're gonna need to give up Solis or DeVries. Like I really don't think that would be the case. but I think you're probably giving up like Snelling, and you're probably, you know what I mean? Like, but we just saw some of these trades. Like Pete Fairbanks can't go for that much based on that most recent trade.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I really don't think so. Like, so it's very interesting to see like how this would look. Dude, it's gonna be fun, dude. I think that's like the big thing. That's what I want to wonder. Like, what's the better move for the Padres is those two. 'Cause I feel like that's kind of what we keep coming back and forth to of like, okay, what's actually realistic? Those are the two realistic ones. Now, obviously, like there's also going to be a bunch of guys that we're not even talking about that are going to be involved. Like, think about 22, like Brandon Drury came out of like nowhere. It's like there's always like guys like that where it's like, oh, Drury ended up being a good pickup, or like Josh Bell, like, oh, we didn't even know that dude. Well, actually, we talked about Josh Bell, I feel like, but there are like guys like that where it's like, oh, okay, or Adam Frazier, you. But yeah, dude, it's gonna be interesting to see how this goes, dude. I'm pumped. I think there's just so many potential options right now, and guys are going to start getting crossed off the list. But I think that's the big one. I think the revised list for that is pretty good. Scott, Fairbanks, Holton, Yimi, and then Estevez and Kopech, right? Those two. But yeah, let us know what you're thinking, guys. Chase, either you have anything else you want to add? Besides,
I'm good, man. I'm good.
Use the link.
Use the damn link.
Underdog. Friar Talk. All right. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Dude, we got you guys a lot of content today, over an hour. We're sitting here. We'll be back on Sunday. If there's any trades, anything like that, we'll do some stuff. Massive series against the Orioles. Honestly, I think the Padres have the advantage on. Clearly, you don't have the advantage tonight, pitching wise. Tomorrow night, we got the advantage. Sunday, I don't think the Sunday starters have been released yet. We'll see how that goes. The next series, Dodgers series after that trade deadline. So teams are going to be looking a little bit different. But yeah, thank you all for listening. We'll have some more stuff out. We'll be hammering home this trade deadline. And you guys have already realized we've posted 3 videos in the last 2 days. So it's been a lot more than what we've been doing recently. We're also all back home now, on vacation and stuff. So that's also a big factor as well. But yep. Thank you guys. Talk to y'all soon. Have a good one. Go Padres.
And use the damn code.